I'm Dr. Dini Miller. I've been a professor here for 26 years at Virginia Tech, and I spend a lot of my time out in the field testing different methodologies for both cockroach and bedbug control. And that's kind of how I arrived at the presentations I'm going to be giving today. One of the things I want to talk about when we're starting off talking about cockroach control in particular, I'm going to let you see how I arrived at these conclusions by working in public housing, but then talk at the end about how you can use this in your school facilities. So let me go ahead and get started here. And there we go. Okay, realize it's very important that you know what your hired pest control company is doing in your facilities, because what you need is pest control, not pesticide application. And that's why I'm making this case for assessment-based pest management, or APM, rather than IPM. And I'll tell you what the differences are here. But if you take a look at that picture that's on the right-hand side here, this is in US HUD housing, and they have a pest control contract. But if you notice all those German cockroach egg cases, there's about 17 of them there. And, do cockroaches like hanging out in brightly lit locations like windowsills, or is just the population so huge that all the good hiding places are taken up? So this is what got me started on this path to assessment-based pest management. Okay, realize that the term integrated pest management was developed for agriculture in the 1970s, and it was for insecticide resistance management specifically. But realize too, these agricultural producers really know their business, and they will go out and scout their crop or a portion of it to identify what pests are there and assess the pest pressure. And there's a couple of metrics that are used for integrated pest management. First of all, the economic injury level, or the EIL. That means the farmer can go out, look at their crop. If there's a particular number of pests, they can tell that if they have too many, that they're going to lose money come harvest time because of damage to their crop. Okay, and that lets them know, yes, I better apply an insecticide just to protect, my income. There's also the economic threshold level. They may go out and look in April to see how many pests they have, and certain types of pests they might know would double or triple their populations come June or harvest time, and therefore it would make economic sense for them to go and apply a pesticide right now. So they do their pesticide application, and they may go out and scout again after they do the treatment to see if the pests are now reduced to a manageable level. Okay, that means they may not have gotten rid of them all, but at least they have them down to a number that they can't expect to lose money come harvest time. Now, keeping that in mind, when we're talking about IPM, how many bed bugs would your mother say is a manageable level? Okay, so it's a little different in the urban environment. One thing I also have to say is that this assessment component, which is the basis of IPM in agriculture, seems to have been completely lost in the urban environment. Nobody requires that they have any assessment. So what led me down this path to assessment-based pest management? Well, the way I support my laboratory, my graduate students and everything, is we do a lot of sponsored research for chemical companies that come up with new cockroach baits and things like that. And we will go and test them out in the field to see how successful they are. Now, I work in Richmond Public Housing. That's where all these pictures are coming from. And the cockroach is there because they have been treated on a calendar-based basis with the cheapest spray formulation insecticides for the last 50 years, okay, or have major resistance to any of the insecticide formulations. And one of the things that was very frustrating when I started working in Richmond Housing, the management told me because they didn't hire me to do this work, that I couldn't ask the resident to clean anything before we got there. And I thought, oh my gosh, these places have so many food sources for cockroaches. How are we going to get them to eat bait if we don't make the residents clean first? But I'll show you what happened with us. So here are the cockroach populations that you can see. This is an upstairs closet, and you see that resident has put out some mothballs, but that doesn't seem to have any effect. And you can see how many cockroaches are there. Now, that picture on the right is nothing but cockroach debris that is in a kitchen cabinet. That's the shed skins and the poops and the dead bodies that have just collected over the years that are still sitting there. And of course, the danger of this is during the wintertime, they close everything up, turn on the heat, all of that debris dries out and becomes airborne, and people start breathing it. And that's why German cockroaches are the #1 cause of allergies and asthma in inner city children. Well, when I started talking to the management about these cockroach populations, I found out that Richmond Public Housing had paid about $6 a door for what they called pest control in 2010, and then paid $5.44 a door in 2020. Now, realize the break-even cost for most pest control companies, at least here in Virginia, is about $1.50 per minute. So that means they knock on the door for an average of 49 seconds. I've timed it, how long it takes to get in, and then have about 2 minutes to go in and spray some stuff and come back out. But if you think about it, can you think of any company on this planet that would charge less 10 years later than they had charged before for technician time? That's crazy. Well, again, sanitation on these sites was very challenging. And we're trying to put bait out, but look at all these competing food sources that we have just sitting there in these apartments. And I thought, boy, this is going to be really hard to conduct this bait study in a place that looks like this, that has all this other food. So the way that we started with this assessment-based pest management is to find out which units were the most infested to use for this study. We would pre-trap by taking 3 sticky traps, labeled them A, B, and C. A for above the sink, B for below the sink, and C for behind the commode. Okay, so they were behind the toilet. And then we would return the next day, pick up the traps, count the cockroaches, and that let us know for this study which apartment was more infested than the other. And then when we selected our units, either having high-level infestations, medium-level infestations, or low-level infestations, we gave all the units 30 grams or 1 tube of commercial bait formulation on day 1. And then we came back on day 14 and put out the 3 traps again. And this time, if our trap catch was less than 50 in all 3 traps, they only got a quarter of a tube of bait. If it was 51 to 100, they got half a tube. If it was 101 to 500, they got a whole tube. And if the trap catch was more than 500 in all 3 traps, that let us know the place was marvelously infested, and they got 2 tubes of bait. Well, one of the things we realized going out there is if we applied, as the label suggests, these little dime-sized, quarter of a dime-sized placements of bait, like you see in that picture on the right with the cockroaches on it, that it took forever to get 2 tubes of bait out. And again, the break-even cost for these pest technicians is $1.50 per minute. And they would never take the time that is required to apply this much bait. And I thought, well, what are we going to do to get 30 grams or 60 grams out? Well, I came up with this idea to go and get some wax paper. And I got the Cut Right brand because it was only 99 cents. And I cut it into these 2-inch by 2-inch squares, then folded it on the diagonal. And this is what I would do in my hotel room at night, and then put bait down the crease. Now, let me show you, we marked the bait tube so we could see where the tube, where the bait inside the tube actually was. So we knew if we did half a tube, that was the 15 grams. If we did the whole tube, that was the 30 grams. And then we marked where the 7.5 grams were. And again, this was all for a product efficacy test. And like I said, we put the bait down the crease of this wax paper and then put the baits into the cracks and crevices according to the pesticide label so that it was a legal way to apply them. And one benefit we noticed right from the beginning is at least we weren't contaminating surfaces with the bait. But now we had what we called the bait taco. I'm from San Diego, California, so of course anything folded like this looks like a taco to me. And they really liked it. We would attract the cockroaches over, I think it was just the wax paper in particular, had some sort of smell that a lot of times, even before we put the baits out, we would see the cockroaches coming right over to the tacos and then start feeding on the bait. And they really liked it. Okay, this was the first time I'd ever seen anything like this. So I showed this picture to one of the apartment managers. You can see we have 3 tacos up here, and this was the top of a refrigerator that had a tray full of cooked rice. But you notice that all the cockroaches were running right over to the bait. And that was pretty amazing. And I showed this to the manager, and he said, yeah, but how long did you have to wait to come back and take that picture? I'm like, we hadn't even left. We hadn't even left. Okay, so I did a trial on this study just to see how effective the bait tacos were. And we worked in 3 different facilities, one in Hopewell, Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, of course, and then Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And here we are putting out the traps. We only leave the traps overnight. Most pest control companies want to leave them there for a week. But that doesn't give us a good indication of the population size, which is what I really needed, and it's what you really need as well. But here you can see Ross over on the left-hand side. He's putting A above the sink. I'm pulling a trap out there from below the sink, and that's the overnight trap catch. And then I'm also placing a trap behind the toilet. So that's A, B, and C. And we worked with some great people out there and kept records of what the trap catch was. So you can see in that middle picture there that we had the list of the apartment units and what we caught in trap A, trap B, and trap C. Everybody always wants to say the cockroaches are coming from next door and stuff. But if you notice the top line there, we caught 3 roaches in A, 4 in B, 3 in C, and applied 7.5 grams. But then right next door, we have what, 282, 269, and 270. And that, of course, required the 30 grams of bait. So once again, our baiting was determined by the trap catch. So in all 3 traps, 1 to 50, they got 7.5 grams or a quarter of a tube of bait. 51 to 100, half a tube of bait. 100, 1 tube. Over 500, they got 60 grams or 2 tubes of bait. And one of the things that we did was took pictures of all of the traps. Here you can see A, B, and C that we have lined up there, so that we could give those to the management, whether they wanted it or not. So they'd have documentation with those photographs of what the problem was. And again, putting out all that bait, we had marvelous success. We had the cockroaches eating all the bait and chewing up kind of the wax paper so we could see that the cockroaches had actually eaten it. And I was able to show this to the residents when we were there, because one problem, the residents always want to spray their own insecticide. Well, if you want the cockroaches to eat a bait, you want them happy and hungry, not sick or anything from having insecticide sprayed on them. So I would ask the resident not to spray anything when we put the bait out. And some of them would say, oh, but we have to, we can't stand it. I'd say, okay, how about don't spray for 3 days and then let me know what you think when I come back. And that was very successful. The residents were very, very happy. And this is another apartment unit. And it shows that the baits were very desirable. And just to give you some idea of our data that we collected, first of all, this is in Rocky Mount housing. In Richmond housing, we had a 90% reduction. In the Hopewell housing, a 99%, but we really did the best in Rocky Mount. And if we kept going, we could get rid of them. But the first 3 months, we used a product called OptiGuard Cockroach. Then we switched to Advion Evolution the next 3 months. Then the next 3 months, Vendetta Nitro, then Max Force Magnum. And one of the things I realized is it's very important that you rotate your bait formulations because we see cockroaches that develop bait aversion. And that means that some of them will not continue to eat baits that have glucose as the primary sugar attractant, and some of them only want fructose, so it works better if you just rotate it. So the black line were the heavy infestations, and the dark gray line were the medium, and the light gray line are the light. And we started in June, which is the worst time of year to start because the populations are doubling, tripling, and quadrupling. But by the time we got to December, we had eliminated all the cockroaches in our test apartments, and through the following September, they did not come back. Now, everybody always says if the resident doesn't clean, they'll just come right back. Well, apparently, no, that is not the case. And over time, over this year and 1 month study, the heavy units received a total of 102.5 grams of bait, the mediums, 91 grams of bait, the light, about 35 grams of bait. So this is more bait than they'd ever received ever before, but it worked. And we were monitoring and baiting every 30 days. We rotated the bait formulations every 90 days and vacuumed to remove the dead bodies. Look at all those dead bodies in that cabinet. But we asked for no cleaning or preparation on the part of the resident. And that we found out was really advantageous. You know, we thought that was going to be really hard, but we found out if the resident doesn't disturb the cockroaches and move them around and stuff like that, and then we come and bring them snacks, that they ate it right then and there. Okay, so if we were working in schools, what would I suggest? Well, I've certainly worked in a lot of restaurants, and definitely you want to put traps out in specific locations and leave them overnight. And I would look for those that have moisture because that's typically where the cockroaches hang out, and certainly under different appliances and things like that where moisture and food debris will collect. And work with your pest management professional. You need to work with them. Don't just turn them loose to do whatever it is they do. You need to see what they're actually doing. And then you want to determine how many traps to place in your kitchen and where, and then leave them overnight. And that will determine for you the best locations for placing bait tacos. So I really do suggest, since they're not spraying anything, you don't need to worry about being contaminated or anything like that, that you work with your pest control professional, tell them exactly what you want, and see exactly what they are doing. Okay, why use assessment-based pest management? Well, assessment needs to be the basis of school IPM. It really does. We have to assess, and I mean getting the trap photos is what you need there, so that there's documentation that the cockroaches are being eliminated over time. So every time they come back, they take pictures of what's in the traps. Also, the technician doesn't have to waste time guessing how much bait to apply. You can. And I'll tell you, the decades of spraying pyrethroid insecticides, we have the same chemistry that's been sprayed for about 55 years now, has really led to cockroach resistance. We killed all the ones that are susceptible to these products, and all we have left are these genetic mutants that are not. So this has got to change. Now, failure to control cockroaches can no longer be blamed on the lack of cleanliness, okay? Because we have proven that we can totally eliminate these infestations regardless of how many other food sources there are available. Apparently, they just love to eat this bait. So we have the power. Okay, I'm going to move on from there quickly so that we can ask questions at the end. How do you protect yourselves and your facilities from bed bug introductions? My life has been all about bed bugs the last 20 years. Please take into consideration that if you work with humans, I work with humans, you work with humans. If you work with humans, bed bugs are now one of your service issues. Okay, we're going to be running into them. Therefore, you need to have bed bug expertise. Okay, learn to recognize bed bugs and their debris, learn how to avoid bed bug contact, and then develop a protocol for dealing with bed bug infested students. Okay, and one of the easiest ways, I'll just let you know right here in the beginning, is have a clothes dryer and have a heat chamber on site and get over your bed bug fear. I work with bed bugs every day for the last 20 years. I never once brought them home, and I don't do anything special. Okay, so what is a bed bug? Got to know what they look like. The adults are the size and color of an apple seed. And this is an adult female. You can see she's round at the bottom. The males tend to be a little bit more pointed. Now, a first instar bed bug, this is the little tiny one, we like to say is about the size of a comma in a paperback book. Okay, so it is pretty tiny. You can see the egg cap still on its head. And the blood that it has in its gut there was from my ex-husband. We fed this guy on my ex-husband. He used to be my technician. It's all legitimate. Okay, so what is the bedbug life cycle? Well, bedbugs, you can see on the left-hand side, we have the female that's round on the bottom. They have a meal, and then the males are very, very affectionate after that and want to mate with the female. And then she will mate and they will produce eggs. And then those eggs hatch. And you see we have that first little instar. And the bed bugs actually go through 5 immature stages before they become reproductive adults. And in order to get from one stage to the next, they actually have to have a blood meal, which allows them to grow, shed their skin, and they basically molt into the next life stage. This takes about 5 to 8 days after they have a blood meal. And then they have to have another blood meal to molt to the next life stage. Now, if they don't get a blood meal because there's no host or anything there, they don't molt and they stay in the current life stage, okay? But if they have somebody to feed on regularly from first instar to a reproductive adult, takes only about 37 days. Okay, they're feeding. Oh, I was on that Dr. Oz show, and that guy just makes things up. He said that the bed bugs bite 3 times, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. No, they will poke. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and they will poke your skin multiple times because they're looking for a capillary space. And if they hit that capillary space, then your blood pulse actually pumps the blood right into their head. So they don't suck the blood out of you. They actually just have it pumped into their head. Then they have a pump in their head that sends it to their abdomen, the big fat part in the back. And they feed for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then after feeding, they're all hot and full of blood. They will tend to leave the host, go back to their aggregation sites if they're immature, or if they're adults, they'll look for mates. And the bed bugs will typically feed every 3 to 7 days. It's more like on the 5-day range. Some of them will eat more frequently, but they have to basically digest and poop that blood out of their body before they can really take much more in, just so they have the space. Okay, signs of bed bugs. Well, bed bugs have to be brought in. They don't just magically appear, okay? And I've had people tell me, oh, if they wet the bed, if somebody wets the bed, then bed bugs will just develop there. No, that's some wives' tale from somewhere. So you have to bring them in. The first indicator typically is somebody having a reaction to the bites. So they can have these itching red welts, but not everybody has the same reaction. My ex-husband, the reason we fed the bed bugs on him in the lab for a long time is because he had no reaction at all. Now, bites can suggest they're bed bugs, but that is not definitive. And unfortunately, medical doctors, when bed bugs first started being a problem, I had all of these people tell me they had been diagnosed with scabies mites only to find out they really had bed bugs. And if you go see a doctor today, most of them will say, oh, those are bed bug bites. But you really can't tell by looking at them because my bites would look different from yours. So other bed bug evidence, well, they have to poop multiple times to get rid of all of that blood. And if you look at that light socket there, you can see all of the bed bug poop. So that's pretty obvious. And you can look at sheets and mattresses and things like that and see that. Also molted skins, because think about these baby bed bugs have to shed their skin every time they feed. So we tend to have all these shed skins all over the place. So in a new infestation, sometimes if there's just ones or twos or whatever in a home, the bed bug evidence can be very hard to find. Yet a lot of times you can run into the shed skins before you see anything else. You know, I was on that Dateline show a long time ago now. It's probably 15 years ago or so, where they were taking me to different hotel rooms looking for bed bug evidence in New York City. And only in one hotel room did I find one shed skin. And let me tell you, hotels get the bad rap all the time, but they are less than 3% of the locations that get bed bug treatments every year. About 92% are in apartments. So don't go to your friend's apartment and sit on their couch. Okay, well, if you have a student that you know lives with bed bugs because they're bringing them in consistently, and we've seen that, have clothes for them to change into on site, put their clothes in the dryer, and make sure you have that heat chamber I talked about. Now, one of the best friends you could possibly have when dealing with onesie, twosie bed bugs is an extra sticky lint roller. And that's what I take with me when I go into these homes that have thousands of bed bugs. I don't wear a special outfit, nothing like that, but I take the lint roller just in case so I can roll it all over my clothes when I come out of that apartment and then see if there's anything stuck to that lint roller or not. And if there's nothing there, you're totally fine. But that's a good way to get bed bugs off of people. Also, like I talked about, the clothes dryer, have one on site reserved for bed bug treatment, okay? And if you can get a dryer with a shelf, that is very advantageous because then you can put people's backpacks and shoes and things like that that can't be tumbled typically onto the shelf, and basically the dryer works as a heat treatment. Okay, what do we do with other items that may have bed bugs? Well, inspect them, and if they're contaminated, you can purchase a heat chamber. Now, this is a smaller heat chamber made for things like books and other articles you might have in the home and things like that. And you can put those into the heat chamber, or you can get a large size one. And I actually recommend this particular brand because a lot of these heat chambers that are large size are like $5,000. And they are so complicated and so big that you can't move them around very easily. Well, this Zap Bug Room is a portable heater that comes kind of on a rolling rack thing. It's only $1,500. It's a little bit flimsier, so it takes longer to get everything up to temperature. 122 degrees is the thermal death point for bugs. But you can put anything in there and just cook it. And it has these heaters that are attached, and also it's got good airflow. You have fans that go in there. And one of the advantages of this one too is it has a zipper on the side. So like you can see in that top picture, you could unzip it and walk into it and rearrange things if you find out that one corner of the room of the heat chamber is not getting up to temperature. And it has ways of measuring the temperatures in there. Okay, so contact an experienced pest management company if you think you have a bed bug issue, and tell them you want an inspection, particularly an assessment. You want some documentation of what they find, and you want vacuuming of the area where any bed bug evidence is seen. And you need, like I said, documentation before they do a pesticide application. So if your pest control contract does not specifically say what is going to be done, you're at the mercy of a low bid company coming in to treat the bed bugs, whatever that might mean, bring them snacks or something like that. Well, you want them to inspect and record the number of bed bugs that were seen and where they were seen. That's part of your assessment. I do recommend for very large areas like a cafeteria or something like that, that you have a canine inspection. The only challenge is some of these dogs are trained that after they find a positive, if they find a live bug, that they get moved on to another room. And you do need in very large rooms to have a thorough inspection. So ask your pest control company or whoever is doing the inspection how it's going to be done. You also want to install monitors in a particular room. I'll show you a picture of that so you can assess what might be wandering around in there. And then discuss the most appropriate treatment options based on the size of the infestation. Do you have 2 bed bugs or 200? The level of clutter. Do you have 75 chairs for students to sit in there that are all going to have to be inspected? And then the square or even now the cubic footage, I've certainly learned, because you can have bed bugs that are up at the ceiling wall junction. So that's pretty important. And then what treatments are you going to use? Heat? Going to have a whole home heat treatment, chemicals, or a combination of both? Usually for great big rooms, we don't have heat systems that are going to be effective. So that's really a challenge. Okay, 2 or more inspections or treatments at 2-week intervals need to take place after the bedbug treatment is done, because we are still having to wait for eggs to hatch, because we do not have an insecticide that kills eggs, but I'll show you a more recent discovery. It's just not labeled yet. And define the word control. Does that mean you have no sightings of bed bugs or no bites? Okay. And then you want records and oversight. Are any of the bed bugs dead after the treatment? How many? Okay. You need to know that and have that as documentation. Okay. Monitoring with dogs. Like I said, dogs are great because they're fast detectors, especially for complicated buildings, but they can't assess. They can't tell you how many bugs are there. Now, the trained dogs can distinguish between live and dead bed bugs, and they only signal a positive on live. So that requires that they have constant training, okay? I ran into a situation at Virginia State University where they had a dog do an inspection, and the dog signaled supposedly on a dead bug. And they said, oh, there was a bed bug that was here before. And I'm like, really? Did you see the bug? No, but the dog signaled, so there must have been a bug there before. Well, no, they're not trained to do that. The dog can learn to train the handler, though. I haven't gotten a treat yet, so now I give a positive signal. So just be aware, every time that they signal that they found something, you want to see a bug, okay? So don't pay for anything until the live bug is found. Okay, these are the monitors I talked about. Sticky traps do not work for bed bugs. They are too smart. Some of them are dumb. A couple might get in there, but it won't tell you anything about how many there are because a lot of them will avoid it. The pitfall traps, like you see on the right, the black one and the white one there, are the ones that are used most predominantly throughout the United States. The least expensive bed bugs crawl up, get into them, fall in, and then they're too slick really for them to get back out. And these are typically put under furniture legs or in other locations, but they need to be checked on a regular basis. If you don't check them, you could have something like this where you have all these bed bug dead bodies, but mixed with soup or something like that. You know, they got poured in there and nobody's noticed that bed bugs are in there. So that's important. Also realize that resistance is ruling our world, just like the German cockroaches and some of the other cockroach species we have. Bed bugs have 3 different types of resistance. The first one is reduced cuticular penetration, which means we have killed all the thin-skinned bed bugs, and all the ones that have a thicker exoskeleton on the outside of their bodies are what's left. So it's very hard to get any dried insecticide into their body. Then enhanced mixed function oxidase activity. What the heck does that mean? Some of these bed bugs that we have selected for have so many enzymes in their body that they may fall down and lay on their backs after they've been sprayed by the insecticide, but then they get up 4 hours later and shake it off because they can recover from it because the enzymes will break down the toxicants. And then there's KDR resistance. Most of our insecticides are pyrethroid chemistry, okay, that work on the alpha subunit of their nervous system. And the bed bugs we have selected for now, we've killed all the ones that had the normal alpha subunit. And now we only have these that have a mutation on that subunit so that the pyrethroid molecule can't attach to their nerve system anymore. And basically, they just don't respond to it. Like this bug is saying, I feel a little twitchy after walking along the baseboard last night. The other one says, oh, yeah, me too. Just sleep it off. You'll feel better in a couple of hours. And these are the insecticides that are labeled for bed bugs in particular that you find that most companies will be using, and their combination of this pyrethroid chemistry, but neonicotinoids have been added to help overcome some of the resistance. And most of you will probably hear from a company that uses Crossfire, that one down at the bottom. Now, these will work if you spray them directly. But we have found that the populations of bed bugs can develop resistance to these combination products in as few as 1 generation. And that is really challenging. So the companies need to rotate their products on a regular basis because there's still going to be these pyrethroids plus neonicotinoid formulations. Okay, we also have desiccant dusts, which have long-term residual activity. Basically, that means you can put these dusts out. It has to be in a very fine layer because the bugs aren't stupid. They're not going to go throw themselves into a pile of dust that's higher than their eyeball. But we have the Mother Earth D, diatomaceous earth. That'll kill bed bugs in about 2 to 3 days if they pick it up. Basically, it absorbs the wax layer on their body. And then the silica aerogel product, which is the Cymexa product there, we can get mortality in 1 day. But these guys last unchanged in things like wall voids where there's low humidity for a very long time. So that's a good product to use. We have a newer product, a new fungal spore product called Apprehend. And these are fungal spores that infect the bed bugs. It does require a respirator for it to be applied. It's supposed to have 3-month residual, but we found out if the humidity gets too high, above 30%, then it seems to lose, half of the spores will die in 24 hours, okay? Sorry, this doesn't show up very well, but label does not specify removal of household clutter, okay? But we do suggest that this is the outfit that your applicator has to wear with a respirator there. And one of the things we found out from one of the developers of this company is if you take 2-inch wide tape and just spray the product on that tape, that lets everybody know where to avoid walking and stuff because the tape is there. But if you apply the Apprehend product, the bugs are going to have to cross that tape to try and get to a human in order to feed, and they can pick up the fungal spores that way, and that's very helpful. So here you can see all of the dead bed bugs that we ended up killing in this apartment using this tape application method. Okay, vacuuming, very important. You see all those shed skins on the carpet there? We found out that the little baby bed bugs will hide in the shed skins. And because all of the bed bugs have thicker skins, because we've selected for the thick-skinned ones, you can spray insecticide over the top of this and it will not kill any of the baby bed bugs. They are protected. So you have to vacuum this up. Very important. One of the things we also discovered fairly recently when using the vacuum is if you have a black light, that lets you see the eggs a lot easier. The eggs kind of show up blue in the black light. So you can use a toothbrush to scrape those up and vacuum them up. Steaming works, but it's kind of a tedious process. Here, you can only move the steamer about 1 inch per second, and you need to have a large steamer head so the velocity of the steam doesn't blow the bugs around to the other side of the room. It will kill the eggs, but it's kind of labor intensive, And keep in mind, if there isn't any bed bugs that you can see in front of the steamer, you're not really steaming anything, but it's good for using for carpet and collections of bed bugs that might get in baseboards and things like that, and especially on furniture. If you see the bed bugs there in this picture and bed bug eggs, then the steaming will kill all of those. Whole home heat systems. We just did a study on this with one of my graduate students. Some of the heating systems are much better than others, and it's got to be, if you're doing a large size room, you've got to have a zillion heaters to do it. So you got to think about that. But we found that the most important thing with heat treatments is not just putting the heaters and the fans in and leaving it there. The technician needs to be in there every 15 minutes, measuring all the temperatures in the hard to heat cracks and crevices. Okay, so consider the room size when you're thinking about this. Look at the number of cracks and crevices, and you're going to have to get measurements that every single piece of space in that room got up to 122 degrees, not just the air temperature. It's got to be the deep cracks and crevices. And what you want is documentation from your pest control company if they come in and do a heat treatment, so that they can show you they measured all of these temperatures and that every location got up to 122 degrees. Otherwise, it's very hard to say what you're getting for your money. Keep in mind, we also have fumigation out there. Not all states are able to use fumigation, but here in Virginia, we actually have one company. Those of you in California, you got a million companies that do fumigation. But we did a study on this as well. You can actually fumigate items that are in plastic bags and piles of stuff and everything that can be packed into a U-Haul trailer and then fumigated with sulfuryl fluoride. You have to have a company that's licensed to do this. And also doing cars, because we're starting to see bed bugs showing up in vehicles on a regular basis. So think about your school buses and things like that. Okay, beware of the internet. Some of the advertisements, we're going to be testing all of this stuff this next year, but some of the advertisements are just crazy. This Bug MD, some of the advertisements used to claim that the insects were disintegrated by the spray. No, this is a plant-based oil. It would just plug their breathing tubes, and it has to be applied directly on them. Spraying your bed and things like that's not going to do it. You've got to see the bugs. Then we have this Pest Lab, says that ultrasonic waves drive them out completely. Drive them to where? You know, the next room? Where do they go? Bed bugs don't go outside, that's for sure, you know. So these are things we need to be aware of, and we'll be investigating this. Here's some good news. We found that the Dawn Power Wash lemon scented actually kills bed bug eggs. They've got to be sprayed directly. And we're going to be doing an advanced study looking at how, whether or not it kills adults and nymphs. Some preliminary studies I've done, yes, it looks like it kills adults and nymphs if you spray them directly, but this is the only thing we have come across that will kill eggs other than fumigation. Okay, like I said, this presentation is much shorter than what I typically give, and there's a lot more information you might need out there. If you're interested, you can get my contact information here. And I did send a copy of the bedbug action plan for schools to Nikki. So you could get that from her if you want to. One little slight change in there, that thermal death point for bed bugs is 122 degrees. Back when this was written, it was thought it was between 114 and 118, and that's true for nymphs and adults, but the eggs have to have 122. Okay. And if you go on the VDAX website and put in bedbug fact sheets, I have a whole variety, both in English and Spanish, that you would be able to download whenever you like. And I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This is all really great information. I can send out the bed bug action plan with the recording to all registrants after this. And we do have 10 minutes for questions, so we can take some questions. And I'm also going to launch the post question while we take questions.
Well, thank you all for listening because this is a lot of information and there is a lot more to be had out there, but this is really the basics. And believe me, with bed bugs in particular, the more you know, the better off you will feel. And don't have bed bug fear. Don't let bed bugs take over your brain. I've seen plenty of people who've allowed that to happen.
We did have one question a while ago. It says, I'm from India where steaming method is not very preferred from customers. Can you differentiate the effect in steaming method and spraying treatment? And I think you kind of talked about this, but maybe you could answer that question.
Yeah, the spraying methods, the products that we have available, you can't guarantee that will actually kill the bugs. So a lot of the spray formulations, even in India, I've been over there, pyrethroids and things like that, the bugs are resistant to, and even if you knock them down, they can recover after a few hours. And that's something you don't want. And again, it will not kill eggs. And we've got eggs all over the place, and we can't even see all of them. The thing about the steaming is that because of that high temperature, it does kill all the bugs and the eggs. But again, you're having to move that steamer very slowly right over their bodies. So much more effective, but it's harder to apply, definitely. More tedious.
Mhm. Someone asked if they could have the slides.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so I can send out the slides too.
I'm going to unmute myself and just ask, can I share these with our Pest Management Association in the state of Arkansas? I'm sorry.
Yes, this one isn't complete. I would recommend that you can share these slides because it has to do with schools and stuff. But I have much broader presentations for bedbug treatment and cockroach treatment.
Yeah, I would like the most for these are going to be for licensed operators and people that are actually going to be doing this for hire. So this is going to be for the professionals that are licensed to do this type of work. So yeah, the more information, if you've got fuller videos, I would love to be able to access those.
Okay, they're
Uh,
not, I don't have any sound attached to them or whatever, but if you can write me or write Nikki, then I can be able to send you one that's more complete. I
oh,
have one that talks about, low level populations, medium level and high level populations, and depending on the cubic footage and things you have to concern yourself with.
okay, I will do that, and I also sent my information in a private chat to you. So, anyways, thank you so much, Dr. Miller.
Okay, no problem.
Do we have any other questions? We still have some time. I'm also gonna just go ahead and put our survey in the chat, pest defense survey.
And can I ask all of you, how many of you have dealt with bed bugs already? And I'd like to hear somebody if they're willing to volunteer what they actually did or what their company did.
We got a thumbs up. Two thumbs up.
Hi, everybody. It's Sam Brick speaking from Toronto, Canada. Uh, I've met you before, Dini. We've had some interesting discussions in the past.
Okay.
I thought that your presentation was great. I worked in the field for 30 years, so I
Mm,
had a lot of experience. We started doing IPM in housing back in 1987 with
okay.
the support of Guelph University, Dr. Gordon Surgener, and we had a great program. And there are a lot of practicalities that are so important. Monitoring, we did a lot of extensive monitoring, but the type of monitoring you described, uh, in my opinion, from my experience, it would be really, really tough to get property management to do that. And I know the pest control companies would want an arm and a leg to do it. So when we sort of went to Bates, uh, we used a fairly straightforward monitoring system where we only used a small number of monitors for cockroaches, and and we did an assessment on that basis, and we eventually stopped using spray altogether. Switched to vacuuming and steam cleaning for careful steam cleaning for roaches, uh, and for bed bugs. I think the key to monitoring for bed bugs is looking at the high risk areas. Bedrooms, mattresses, box springs, headboards, sofas, things like that.
Whatever chair has the best view of the TV. Yeah.
Exactly. And using that kind of monitoring, we sort of determined whether there was a really active infestation.
Mhm.
And then we also used tenant surveys a lot, where we developed a really great survey, which was not that long, and we did it in a variety of ways. One, by having the property management give it to tenants in their mailboxes, and also some of them were so devoted that they actually did it door to door, which gave even better results, and
Yeah.
use that kind of feedback for assessment for treatment.
Mhm.
So I appreciate your presentation. I mean, I'm still involved in this in different ways. I keep up with it, and it's certainly an interesting area. Bed bugs certainly made our job rather hot once they sort of came on the scene. And I still remember having arguments with people in PCT about the use of DDT and chlordane. It was amazing how some of the old timers just couldn't let go of their experience when DDT was so important in
Mhm.
terms of malaria control, for example. But thank you for your presentation. Enjoyed it very much, and you know appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And, thinking about schools too, got to remember that, in these kitchen areas, we're going to have Oriental cockroaches, we're going to have German cockroaches, we're going to have American cockroaches and things like that. And that's one of the reasons for this monitoring in particular is know what species you're dealing with, particularly to get out the right amount of bait, you know. And American cockroaches can eat a whole lot, so it's really good to know how many you've got out there so you know how much to put out. So, but
Well,
thanks. I
we're
appreciate your
lucky in
time.
Canada because about 99% of our infestations are German cockroaches,
Yeah.
and you get the rare Australian and American, very rare. I mean, I think in all my years, I only ever saw one major infestation in the garbage room of a large department store in downtown Toronto that just found a great climate there. Otherwise, you'd never see them. And occasional Oriental, but still
Yeah.
very rare. But I can appreciate, certainly the Americans will eat that bait, very, very quickly.
Right.
But
Right.
the bed bug situation, it is pretty tough. We had some good experience with heat treatment. I mean, what I found is one, to get companies to do it was very, very expensive, and I
Mhm.
found some companies who were doing heat treatment got out of it because they just weren't getting enough business. It was so expensive
Right.
to do it. So I worked with one of the large property management organizations, and we developed a system for treating vacant units. We never treated occupied units with heat treatment because it was just too involved. But
Mhm.
we would do control in vacant units to eliminate the bed bugs, and we would use heat treatment. And we bought some very efficient heaters and used the remote sensors, and
Yeah.
and then we had it done in house so that the in-house maintenance guy could monitor it on a notebook computer uh,
Mhm.
while he was in the building. He'd set it up and get the treatment going, and it goes on for about 6 hours.
Yes.
And so he could monitor that until they reached the kill temperature. And I certainly encourage that because it means for a property management that when they rent an apartment, they can, tell the tenant that the apartment is free of bed bugs. I mean, I had one case where a refugee immigrant uh, rented an apartment and they had bed bugs, and the landlord had a lease with them and refused to let them out of the lease until I stepped in and wrote a report, and then they let them out of the lease. And
Mhm.
I'm
but
gonna
okay,
we're
thank you.
thank you. We're at 1 o'clock, so I wanted to just maybe you could just answer this one last question really quick. What are your thoughts on adding DE to vacuum to kill bed bugs?
Adding diatomaceous earth
That
to
must be to
to
vacuum.
vacuum. Well, you wouldn't be putting it in the vacuum. But yes, you definitely want to do vacuuming, but the diatomaceous earth it has kind of limitations on where you can put it. You can vacuum a couch and everything, but do you really want to put diatomaceous earth there? And let me point out something very important because I just ran into this. I was at an elder care facility where they had the guy who made lunches went and bought diatomaceous earth at Lowe's, and he got the swimming pool filter variety, which is heat treated, and it is an inhalation hazard. And he was applying it to the beds of these elderly people. So you need to make sure that the diatomaceous earth you are using is of the insecticide quality and certified for use on bed bugs. Okay, very, very important. And yes, you can use it. We do recommend it for wall voids and other locations behind appliances and things like that, where you wouldn't necessarily have human contact with it. And that's just so that kids aren't getting into it. Not that it's dangerous or anything like that, but and don't use the swimming pool variety.
Mm.
Thanks.
One area where we also used it was in box springs.
Yes, that's a
So
good place.
and if you have a power duster or even a mechanical duster and you put it into the box spring and then encase the box spring,
Yes,
well, you're never going to get any infestation there ever.
exactly.
All
Very
right.
good.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller, again.